Thank you very much for waiting. Now we would like to start the APN, a Graduate School of Disaster Resilience and Governance, University of Hyogo, co-present the Climate Change and Disaster Reduction Forum. I am Amal from APN Secretariat, and I'm going to serve as a MC today. So first of all, on behalf of the organizer, I would like to invite Ms. Linda Ann Stevenson, Program Director of APN Secretariat.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Climate Change and Disaster Reduction Forum. My name is Linda Stevenson, and I am Program Director at the Secretariat of the Asia-Pacific Network for Global Change Research, hosted here in Kobe by the Hyogo Prefectural Government. I extend my warmest greetings to all participants, whether you're joining us in person or online, and I express my heartfelt gratitude for your interest in this vital forum. Your presence, spanning from Japan to many parts of the world, underscores the importance of our collective efforts in addressing the pressing issues of climate change and disaster reduction that we face today. In recent years, we have witnessed an alarming increase in weather-related disasters worldwide, underscoring the urgency of climate change as it becomes a climate crisis. The joint message on climate change and disaster reduction strategy in the era of climate crisis, released by the Cabinet Office and the Ministry of the Environment of Japan in June 2020, highlighted the imperative for effective coordination between climate change countermeasures and disaster prevention and mitigation measures. Drawing from the lessons learned from a multitude of disasters, notably the imminent 30th anniversary of the Great Hanshin Awaji earthquake, and guided by the principles of the Sustainable Development Goals, we must focus our attention on crafting resilient recovery strategies for future disaster events. This approach, known as adaptive recovery, necessitates a proactive mindset in anticipating and mitigating the impacts of unforeseen disasters. The Asia-Pacific Network for Global Change Research has been at the forefront of promoting regional collaborative research and scientific capacity building on global environmental change since its establishment in 1996. As an organization headquartered here in Hat, Kobe, a symbol of reconstruction from the Great Hanshin Awaji earthquake, APN has been collaborating closely with the Graduate School of Disaster Resilience and Governance, University of Hyogo, since 2020. Together, we have conducted events for local residents here in Hyogo and here in Hyogo Prefecture, and imparted lectures for university students, fostering a deeper understanding of climate change and disaster reduction. Today's forum provides a platform for participants to explore climate change from diverse perspectives and engage with the global community. In the first part of our event, we are honored to have Associate Professor Hiroshi Taniguchi from the University of Hyogo, who will deliver a keynote speech on weather-related disasters caused by climate change and the impact on our environment. In the second session, Professor Michiko Banba will expertly facilitate discussions on overseas case studies, featuring presentations from our esteemed speakers, Dr. Balt, who will discuss the extreme impacts of drought in Mongolia, and Professor Andreas Neef, who will discuss the impacts of flood events on communities in Samoa and Fiji in the Pacific region. I would like to encourage active participation from all of our attendees during the question and answer session, as your insights and questions will contribute significantly to our collective learning and understanding. Finally, I extend my sincere appreciation to each of you for your support and collaboration in organizing this forum. It is our hope that today's discussions will be enlightening and impactful for all of us as we strive towards a more resilient and sustainable future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So today's forum is held in Kobe City and we have in-person attendance, but at the same time we also have an online participants. This is a hybrid event. And we have viewers not just from Japan, but also from outside of Japan as well. In part 1, we have the keynote lecture, and in part 2, we are going to have introduction of overseas cases. We are going to start part 1 soon. Now, we would like to start the keynote lecture. From the University of Hyogo, Graduate School of Disaster Resilience and Governance, Associate Professor Hiroshi Taniguchi is going to present. After graduating with a PhD in Graduate School of Environment Science in Hokkaido University, he worked as a researcher at the Disaster Preventive Research Institute, Kyoto University, as well as JAMSTEC and IPRC on University of Hawaii. And since 2023, he's been serving Associate Professor at the Graduate School of Disaster Resistance and Governance. He has experts in climate disaster, meteorology, climatology, and geophysical fluid science. Today, he's going to talk to us about the weather-related disasters caused by climate change and their impact on the environment. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am Taniguchi from University of Hyogo, and I'm going to talk about the weather-related disasters caused by climate change and their impact on the environment. So on this first slide, I have a picture in front of you. This is from May 7th in 2008. It shows the damage from cyclone Nargis in Myanmar. There was one more significant disaster in Myanmar, but actually this is one of the first after the war that they had such a big disaster, and this is one of the biggest disaster after World War II. So we have been seeing and then hearing many record-breaking disasters, but when we think about Japan, and if you think about the climate disasters, I would like to think about these cases in Japan. And today, this is what I'm going to present as the keynote. First, I want to give you some examples of the climate change, and then I'm going to talk about the global warming or Earth really warming. I mean, last year, it was a very hot year with the record high, but we would like to look at the data at record to see how hot it was. And when it comes to the changes in temperature and other climate-related changes, I mean, I have different graphs, but what's the difference between weather and climate? In some cases, they are confused and misused, but I would like to position them and clarify what are the differences. And after that, I'm going to talk about how the Earth climate is determined, and then focus on Japan and think about the global warming in Japan. What are the environmental effects?
So this is my summary. As I said at the very onset of my presentation, there is a great daily fluctuation of the temperature. So I said that temperature trend increases significantly and daily fluctuations are large, and climate and weather are different. And also, when we speak of global warming, when we speak of greenhouse effect, we might misunderstand by saying that global warming works in a negative manner to the Earth. However, because of the greenhouse gas, we are able to have a more pleasant environment on the Earth. However, there is a limitation. when the temperature rises to a certain limit, it turns to water vapor and it can fall as a rainfall. And the higher the temperature, the greater the water vapor. And the factor that increases the temperature is the water vapor and the CO2. Water vapor, in case of water vapor, there is a limitation, and once the water vapor reaches its limitation, it can fall as a rainfall. But in case of CO2, there is no limitation. Therefore, we cannot ignore the effect of CO2 increase. And therefore, the impact of CO2 is greater than the impact of water vapor. And also, as an effect of global warming, Sapporo and Tokyo or Fukuoka or Kobe, in any cities, from daily temperature, we say that last year was a very hot year. But as we saw in Minami Torijima, the effect was small. So the global warming's impact is greater in the colder area and less in the area closer to the equator. And also, in case of snow coverage, the snow-covered area will decrease. And although the snowfall frequency may not increase or it can be less, there is a possibility of extreme heavy snowfall. And in terms of typhoon, there are less frequency of typhoons. And however, once the typhoon hit us, the typhoon can be enormous and it can lead to a disastrous effect. And that's my summary. Thank you very much. I think I was able to stop a little earlier than planned. So thank you very much, Professor Taniguchi.
So now we would like to start the part 2. For those of you attending online, we have about 80 people joining this program today. So now let's start the introduction of overseas cases. Professor Banba, Dr. Balt, and Associate Professor Taniguchi is here. And Dr. Neef, you can be ready online. And this part will be facilitated by Professor Banba of the University of Hyogo. And please refer to the handout for her profile. So first, we would like to invite Dr. Balt, Head of Administration Planning and International Cooperation Department, Mongolian Academy of Sciences. Today, she's going to talk about the climate change impact and adaptation options of nomadic pastoral systems in Mongolia.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be participating in this forum. And thanks to all the participants and the colleagues from APN to invite us to participate in this good forum. I'm also bringing some of our colleagues from the Mongolia who is participating for my project, and local government offices, and also some of the research institutes. And thank you so much. Yeah, so I would like to start in my presentation. Yeah, today's my topic is the climate change impact and adaptation options of the nomadic pastoralism and its systems in Mongolia. I would like to explain about how the climate change is affecting in Mongolia. Today's topic is I would like to discussing about these 5 topics: climate change, how affecting in Mongolia, how it's changing, how pastoral nomadic systems and its role is in Mongolia, and also the climate extremes, especially the Mongolian drought, heavy snow, is affecting Mongolia, and also how this pastoral vulnerability and its impacts on the human society. then finally, I will be discussing about some of the adaptation options for this kind of the changes and the vulnerabilities. So the first one is I little bit explain about the climate change and its impacts for the pastoral systems in Mongolia. But firstly, I would like to very thanks for the Professor Taniguchi. He was explaining very good about how the climate change and it is in the world and also in the region, country, something he will explain it. That's why I would like to explain in this part for the Mongolian case is only two variability I would like to choose. The first one is the, for example, in this map shows about the air temperature changes, and it is how global warming is affecting in Mongolia, how it is distributed in the whole country of the Mongolia. For example, from this map, you can see the more dark brown colors is showing about the highest temperature over than the 2.5 Celsius. And the light colors is showing about the temperature. But in whole country of the Mongolia, most of the part is affected by the high temperature over than 2.0 Celsius. For example, it is affecting more than 900 people and over than 67 million livestock and 105,000 square kilometer pasture. Which means like over than 60% of the country is already affected by this high air temperatures. And the below map is showing about precipitation changes. He is also explaining about the decreasing point of the precipitation. It is also observed in Mongolia. For example, like this color, brown colors is showing about the decreasing precipitations during the period. In the middle part and the east part of the Mongolia is decreasing. And based on these two indicators and the other indicators, the desertification map of Mongolia was renewed in 2020. It's seen from this map, the most of the area is under the desertification. The desertification level is increasing, and also the affected area is also increasing. For example, like the over severe level of the desertification is affected already 9 provinces area. There is many of the people and livestock affecting. Okay. Secondly, I would like to explain about how the pastoral systems is important for the Mongolia. For example, here I would like to showing about this map. I explain about this map. The how to say the blue, the size of the there's a red color is showing about the graphic is showing about the economic sector's role by land use, employment, and GDP in Mongolia. We are more focusing on the mining and also the animal husbandry sectors because the economic sectors are more important for the economic and the people's life of the Mongolia. Animal husbandry sector is using about 70% of the total land, and it has almost 25% of the people in the people of employment, but it is contributing about 10% of the GDP in Mongolia. But mining sector, from this map, mining sector is contributing almost 25% of the GDP, but only 0.3% of the land they are using, and also 4.6% of the people they are working in this factor. It's seen from this map how animal husbandry sector is important for Mongolia, especially for the human and also the GDP and livestock and pasture land. So therefore, the animal husbandry sector is very important for the human lives in Mongolia, especially for the nomadic pastoralism. So now I would like to a little bit explain about the nomadic pastoralism. This is kind of the human means the herders, and livestock pasture system. Those three of the indicators are the very relatively compacted and connected with this pastoral nomadism from the human and environmental coupled system. Then pasture land is main resource for the nomadic pastoralism. The pasture is very vulnerable to the climate change, and the ecosystem is becoming very arid. This means like the more affecting livestock and the human systems in future maybe. Therefore, we should be more focusing on the how this climate change is affecting for our human and environmental systems. It is so important. So climate change extremes is increasing in the last 16 years, based on our previous studies. For example, like heavy snow is one of the disaster in Mongolia. Seen from this picture, you can see the heavy snows, and due to this heavy snows, the most of the livestock is dying because of the no food and the very cold temperature. It is very big disaster in Mongolia. And then this map is showing about our livestock number. Livestock number by sheep unit. This blue color is showing about the sheep unit of livestock number. This orange color, pink color is showing about livestock numbers by all types. Then this green color is showing about the carrying capacity. Since 1917 to 2022, how our livestock number is changing, you can see from here. But based on the impact of the climate change, those disaster, we called it the Zud. Zud is happening several times. For example, like in 2002, before 1998 to 2002, there was happening the Zud disaster. Due to this disaster, the number of the livestock is decreased about 40% to 45%, depending on the areas. And after that, about maybe 10 years later, during the 2009 to 2010, it is also happening. Then after 10 years later, for this year, it is also happening. Based on those disaster of the Zod, the number of the livestock is decreasing very sharply. That's why our proposing options is we should be keeping the number of the livestock under the carrying capacity of the pasture. Otherwise, we will be getting the more influence on our economy and the peoples. Therefore, we would like to more identify how Zod is happening, how it is interconnected with the climate change as well. Then this slide is showing about the assessment of the drought and correlations between the Zod index at the national level. Then brown colors are showing about the high droughts occurring in each of the parts from 1970 to 1990, and then 1991 to 2015. And between this period, how drought is occurring, and this map you can see the drought indexes, how it is changing. If it is reaching to the 1, it is becoming the high index of the drought. And then in the same time, we also identifying the drought. The drought is also occurring in the opposite sides, very high levels, based on the interrelated with the drought. So it's seen from this map, you can see that this the highlighted red colors. When drought indexes become higher, the drought index is also becoming higher. Then their correlation are very high, which means if the drought is the basic conditions for the drought. So, for example, here from summer of the 2000 to winter of the 2002 and 2003, about the 80% of the total country occurred by the drought, and also in winter of the 2009 to 2010, almost the 80% of the country occurred by the drought. It's seen from the drought of the previous years, it is also very high drought was occurred in the whole country. This is the very basic of my previous studies. Then based on this assessment, I try to identify more in the local areas, how it is observing in the local area, how it is affecting. Then I would like to explain about our 2 projects. The first one is project first is implemented in the local area from the western part of the Mongolia and also in China. The second project is more focused on the local cities. So, yes, in this ecological vulnerability adaptation project, we mostly focused on how adaptation and vulnerability was identified. We chose the 3 components. First one is drought, pasture use, and average vegetation cover change. And then based on these 3 indicators, which area is more vulnerable for pastoral vulnerability? For example, like most affecting indicator was the drought and also the pasture use. And then this is also affecting the livestock numbers. Mostly miscarriage of the goat, female goats is more affected for the pasture vulnerability. It's seen from this map that those areas are more vulnerable areas selected. Then it is also affecting the householders and the herders and also population changes in the local cities. Then one of the indicator was the life expectancy for the males in that area. When pastoral vulnerability increasing, the life expectancy was decreased for the males in that area. That is our point. Then based on that vulnerability indicator and assessment, we proposed some of the options for each of the sub-cities and sub-provinces. What kind of the indicator was high, what kind of the options can be proposed to them. Then second project was more focusing on the capacity building for the local governments and also how to reducing the vulnerability based on the local strategies. This is also including similar three indicators, vegetation cover change, pasture, and also droughts. Yeah, each of these 5 provinces, and the province level, it was assessed. Then, based on those assessments, we proposed some of the adaptation options for the targeting 5 sub-provinces. For example, here is how the bank savings per person is good. It is how relating from the livestock numbers in each of the provinces or each of the sub-provinces, how we can reducing and how it is related with the livestock numbers or the per households. Those are the some of the options we are trying to present to them to reducing their vulnerabilities, which relating from the pastures. And lastly, in the local government, during this year and the last year, the most of the people from the local government and the local area, they are participating for some of the workshops, which is we are introducing our research results and assessments to them, and they are learning from the scientific studies. Then they try to reduce in their vulnerabilities based on this kind of the learnings. They are very actively participating, and those of the learning documents already distributed to them, they are also very much appreciating to participate in those kind of the capacity building trainings, especially how those climate changes affecting for their local area. What kind of the options can we do? Those are their learnings. Then it's seen from these topics and our proposed options. The most of the important thing is the learning, which is the local people, they can learning from each others. This is my conclusions. Then based on our last two and the modern researches, we should understand more about the climate, pasture, and livelihoods of those of the 3 things in Mongolian case, and also we should be which indicator is most important is the drought and the intensive pasture use. The most sensitive zones are the mountain steppe and the steppe zones. The pastoral vulnerability results in increasing miscarriage in the female goats. Then this process is one of the factors to affecting the income of the herders directly. That's why they should be more focusing on. Then the local governments, they are very much appreciating for the adaptation options and the strategies, which is using those kind of the visualization, which they can see is very good informative for them. And also the another thing is in the increasing opportunity of the being accessibility to the market for the herders to reducing the livestock numbers and increasing the income is very important things. And also it is also affecting some of the men, especially taking the herders and the pasturing is more sensitive for the climate change in the Mongolian case. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Balt.
Next, we would like to have a presentation from Professor Andreas Neef, a professor of University of Auckland in New Zealand. The title of his presentation is From Sea Level Rise to Floods and Cyclones, Challenges of Multi-Hazard Risk Environments in Fiji and Samoa. Please, Dr. Neef.
皆さん、こんにちは。My name is Andreas Neef. I'm very glad to be with you connected via video conference. Thank you to the APN Secretariat for inviting me. So my presentation is about sea level rise and floods and cyclones, where I want to talk about challenges of multi-hazard risk environments in 2 Pacific Island countries, so very different environment to the one that we just heard about in Mongolia. These are small island, large ocean countries as opposed to landlocked Mongolia. The photo that I show here is taken, I took it in January this year, and I chose it as a starting photo because it expresses both disaster and hope. On the left side, you see the rising sea, and on the right side, you see a newborn calf, which expresses new life and hope. And I thought that's a very good starting point for this presentation. In New Zealand, where I live and work, we have a tradition that we took from the indigenous people, the Maori, that we always introduce ourselves to the audience briefly so that you get a bit of our personal context. We call it ko wai ao, which is who I am. So my current position is I'm a professor in development studies at the School of Social Sciences at the University of Auckland in New Zealand. I have been there for more than 10 years. My previous position was Professor of Resource Governance and Participatory Development at the Graduate School of Global Environmental Studies at Kyoto University. And my previous and current research, I was fortunate to have an APN project a few years ago on climate change adaptation in post-disaster contexts. And that was in Fiji and Cambodia at the time. Then I did some work on climate migration in Samoa and Solomon Islands, also in the Pacific, funded by the Royal Society of New Zealand. And more recently, I got another generously funded project by the Asia-Pacific Network for Global Change Research on climate micromobilities in Fiji and Samoa. So that has just started. I want to start with some work that we have done from 2015 to 2019 on climate change adaptation in post-disaster recovery, where we had focused on flood-affected communities in Cambodia and Fiji. We had partners from New Zealand, from Fiji, Cambodia, and Australia. And we had this originally this goal to look at flood-affected communities. But when we started this project, there was a very big cyclone that actually the strongest cyclone that ever hit the southern hemisphere, with very strong winds. You see here a destroyed church on the right-hand side on the upper photo, and a small destroyed home in Votua, one of the communities where we did the research. So we learned very quickly that those are communities that live in multi-risk environments. And this is the area where we did our study in the Ba River catchment in Fiji, the largest island of Fiji. This is Viti Levu, and people are mostly fisher folks, but they also do sugarcane production, which you see here on the upper right-hand side. And in the upper part of the Ba catchment, they raise livestock, mostly cattle farming. And they also have one village where they still have a very traditional architecture that you can see here at the bottom right, which is very good against cyclones. It's a very traditional, well-established architecture, but unfortunately people are increasingly replacing those traditional houses by what they call modern houses, but those modern houses are often less resistant against strong winds. So some of the work we have done was around participatory hazard mapping, where we sat down with local people and we try to understand what are the hazards that they are facing. We learned, for example, this yellow area here is the area that was worst affected by Cyclone Winston in 2016. the light blue area outside here, that was the area worst affected by flooding. And then the purple area along the river, that was the area most affected by riverbank erosion. And then we discussed also what are the solutions people came up with, like building stronger houses and reinforcing the riverbank with those meshed wires and stones. But what we learned very quickly is that it's very difficult for local people to adapt to multiple risks, to various natural hazards. For example, in March 2012, when a major flood happened in one of the communities, there were about 200 people that found shelter in the second story of the local school, and they could stay there for a few days under very difficult conditions, but all of them survived. Now, when Cyclone Winston happened, many of the schools in Fiji were actually destroyed by strong winds, or the roofs were taken off. So we found that around 1/3 of the primary and secondary schools were either damaged or completely destroyed by Cyclone Winston. So what was a good strategy as shelter for a flood situation was not such a good strategy when it came to the cyclone, where the schools were just not built strong enough to withstand the cyclones. And similarly, at the individual level, some of the people after the floods in 2012, they started to build two-story homes. They just put some of their homes on stilts, on those these constructions that you see here. This gentleman on the bottom middle photo, he showed me very proudly that he's now building a second-story home, so that he will be able to be safe from floods. But then the next catastrophe that happened was the cyclone. And the cyclone took away all those structures on stilts, and people had to actually start again from zero. When I visited in May 2016, 4 years later, everything was destroyed and people had to build up their homes again. So what was meant to be a strategy against a flood then didn't prove resilient enough for a major cyclone, a very strong storm. Similarly, we did interviews with local people, and we asked, after the floods in 2012, a few years later, we asked them, what have you done to adapt to the floods? And they said, yes, we built those two-story homes, we store our food, water, and fuel. And most importantly, we plant more tree crops, because we learned that during the flood, we can still harvest crops from the tree, different fruits like breadfruit, papaya, banana, coconut. But then Cyclone Winston happened, and all those trees were actually uprooted and flying around and hurting or even killing people. So when we asked again after Cyclone Winston, then they said, we are now cutting back all surrounding trees. Again, one strategy that was useful for floods was not so useful against a major cyclone. We also looked into plant relocation strategies, and Fiji is one of the countries that are, actually it's the first country in the world that developed plant relocation guidelines to get people out of the way due to climate change. They also have displacement guidelines in the context of climate change and disasters. And those guidelines might be helpful for relocating people. And we looked at one particular example in our study area where a small community of 17 households collapsed into the river. All the houses were gone. Then Australian aid came in, and Habitat for Humanity, the Fijian government as well. And they built houses for those relocated people on a hillside But it's a very dry area, so people are now safe from floods, but they are more exposed to droughts, and they're also very far from the river and the ocean. The river and ocean is their livelihood. It's very important for food security, so that they have fish to eat and fish to sell and other seafood. So they miss their old location, and most of them are not very well off financially. Now, we asked people that remained in the main village whether they also want to move, and most people actually were not planning for relocation. Some had considered a relocation, or they mentioned relocation during the interviews, but most of them said, we don't know where to go, there's lack of land, we are worried about housing, we don't have the financial means to move, and we have also a strong sense of belonging. And our elders in particular want us to stay because they say this is the place of our ancestors. Here's an interview quote where one of the women said, she actually was very worried about her children, and she thought that the village leader, the headman, should have considered relocation, but their ancestors have grown up here, and the main source of livelihood is the river, so it's very hard for us to relocate. Now, here are two other villages that relocated, and they actually were also relocated by the Fijian government to higher ground. And first, they thought they were safe and they felt quite comfortable, as you can see here from some of the quotes, that they were very happy and delighted to move to another place. But then you also see that they were a bit worried about the landslides because they are on the hillside. And that's what actually happened in one of those two villages, that a whole hillside here in the background collapsed into the primary school, destroyed one whole building of the primary school. And fortunately, there were no students in this school at the time, so there were no lives lost. But it was a very scary situation for the community. So again, you can see in those small islands in the Pacific, it's very hard to find a place where people are safe. And this brings us to a strategy that we found in Samoa, in another Pacific island, during a study that was funded by the Royal Society of New Zealand. And this is a cultural practice that is called Fa'a Aingalua, which means living with two families, where people are actually able to, and you see that on the map, some people still live close to the sea, close to the river, but this river, which looks very nice and peaceful on this photo that I took a few months ago, this river can turn into a catastrophe when it's flooding. But then people can actually move back to the area. So here are all the houses that are further inland, and they have always some relatives living further inland, so people can actually move from the sea and from the river. When there is a major risk, they can move inwards to be safe. You can see here some of the quotes from a publication that we did recently. My older brother still lives at the coast, but when it's close to the rainy season, they come here, then afterwards they move back. So they can find a safe place during the rainy season. Here again, another quote: we bring our relatives here when the water floods until it goes down, then we take them back. So this strategy, we felt, could be a good alternative to planned relocation. And therefore, we decided to apply for another project through the Asia Pacific Network for Global Change Research, where we want to identify those small-scale movements of people and how that might enable them to stay where they are, to remain, to keep their houses in the places without a whole relocation of the community, which is often very costly, and what our previous findings have shown can also be quite dangerous if they move to the wrong place. These are some of the photos of our consultations with local stakeholders. So we spent quite some time to discuss our methods also with the local people. These are some of the areas where we are conducting our study. And you see that they are strongly affected by sea level rise. Here is a destroyed seawall because of rising seas, there's more and more waves that destroy the coastal areas, that submerge the coconut trees here in the middle of the photo. And if you look at this person who is out there standing in the sea, this is actually where the shoreline was only 4 years ago. So within just 4 years, this village has lost around 10 meters of their shoreline. So this kind of underscores what Taniguchi sensei earlier reported about the strong impacts of climate change, of rising temperatures on sea level rise, and how it's affecting people. The speed is just really scary and concerning. We visited this family here. Their house is completely gone. This is the bathroom or kitchen area here that is still left. But the cemetery of the village is completely now underwater. So again, the sea level rise is really threatening people's lives. There are some interesting projects, one Japanese project that helped local people to re-establish a forest, a mangrove forest along the coast. And often those natural barriers against floods and sea surges are actually quite efficient and in some cases, much better than artificial seawalls. So we are hoping through our project to better understand what are the local people's own adaptive capacities and mobility capabilities. We want to understand what are differences between women, elderly, children, persons with disabilities in comparison to like the men or those that are strong and healthy in terms of being mobile. And our project also, and this is again due to the very good financial support that we are getting from APN. We can work with early career researchers, with students. We have strong collaboration with local stakeholders from local and national governments to conduct this study. And we also want to strengthen the capacity among policymakers so that they can come up with better relocation guidelines, but also maybe rethink relocation, whether that's always the best strategy in the interest of local communities. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. You can follow the project on climatechangeplus.net. And this photo is another example of a natural barrier. This is actually this is beach morning glory. It's actually a weed. It grows naturally. But this gentleman here is very happy that this weed grows around his house because it protects his house from flooding, at least for the time being. But he's also concerned about the future. Arigatou gozaimashita.
Thank you very much, Professor Neef.
So now we would like to ask Professor Banba, Graduate School of Disaster Resilience and Governance, University of Hyogo, to facilitate the Q&A. Banba from University of Hyogo, nice to meet you. So I would like to first, we had one keynote lecture and then there were two cases. But first, we would like to receive questions and comments from the floor. So let's see if anyone on site have questions. Please raise your hand. And if you're attending online, you can send in your questions to Q&A in Zoom. So anyone, any questions, comments? So let's see from the venue in Kobe if anyone has any questions or comments. There is one from here. And please read. I have a question to Dr. Taniguchi. So in your keynote, and you talked about typhoon becoming stronger, but as much as Kobe is concerned, last year in 2023, we didn't have major typhoon approaching Kobe or landing on Kobe. So based on what I experienced, because of the warming of the, I was just wondering if it had an impact on the current of the airflow. Well, thank you very much for your question. First, as much as the city of Kobe is concerned, we felt like there was no major impact last year, but it's just a coincidence. There are some typhoons. Some years we have some typhoons, and I think a couple years ago there was one typhoon that passed Awaji Island, and then a very strong rain wind approached Hyogo Prefecture and brought a lot of rain. And last year, not many typhoons approaching Kobe. It's just a coincidence, and it doesn't guarantee that we don't have any typhoons in the future. I mean, it really depends on the course of typhoon, and course of typhoon is determined by the atmospheric conditions, specifically high pressure system in the Pacific Ocean, and that's pretty dominant over Japan, bring many sunny days. But the location of the high pressure system is impacted by the surface temperature of the ocean in tropical area, and they are impacted by El Nino or La Nina phenomenon. And last year to this year, we observed El Nino phenomena, and because of this impact, the Pacific high pressure system was very strong and very much dominant over Japan, and that made it less likely to have a typhoon approach in the West Japan. And I think that was the analysis of a JMA in 2023. But does this apply this year? Because El Nino is becoming weaker, and I think the situation will change. So if we, rather than just looking at Kobe, but if you look on the global scale, typhoons approaching Japan basically is being impacted by the sea temperature or the ocean temperature in the tropical area. And I wonder, what's the other question you asked? Sorry. Oh, the atmospheric flow has changed or not? Well, I think I already answered that question. Basically, depending on the situation in tropical area, it changes, but it's not a fixed event. I mean, they keep changing.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? If not, online we have received a question. It was here, but the question has disappeared.
Professor Neef responded the questions.
So, Professor Neef, from Professor Neef, there was a response made from Professor Neef to the question that was raised online.
Do you believe that mitigating carbon emissions can reduce these disaster effects related to climate change? If not, what are some practical steps in your opinion?
If I could just add to what I wrote in response to the question, I really believe that it's not too late to act, but I think we need to be much bolder in our mitigation efforts, because we still have lobbying industries that say, well, we still need fossil fuels, we still need to go on with oil and gas explorations. So we really need to convince those big oil companies, gas companies, and governments to really act now, because we only have a very small window left. And those Pacific islands, the island that Taniguchi Sensei presented, Tuvalu, they will disappear within the next 20, 30 years if we don't act now and really considerably reduce our emissions.
ありがとうございます。Thank you very much.
Taniguchi Sensei, if you look at the current events, I mean, are they irreversible? Or is there anything we can do today? As Professor Neef just touched on, is there anything we can do today? Well, I think that the IPCC report pointed out that if the reason we have to reduce the CO2 emission right now is because if you look at the climate change on the long term, I mean, we can't change it overnight, but if we continue to work on it, because the climate is really on the span of 10, 20, or even a century level, and you can't change the trend right away, but they are not necessarily irreversible, because if we take actions earlier, then the impact we see in dozens of years or hundreds of years, the changes will occur earlier. So it doesn't mean that if we do something, I mean, we can reduce the temperature or we can reduce the typhoons, but earlier the better to take actions so that we can create a change in maybe tens of years or hundreds of years. I think that's the purpose.
Any other questions? Yes, there are two questions from the floor. There was a presentation from Mongolia, and the human lifespan is being impacted by the climate change. This was said, but I would say that it is more impacted from medicine or nutrition. That's what I think. And also with regard to drought, in Mongolia, you have a large space of land, but do you not have any river? If you have river, I think you would be able to manage the river and the water, and by doing so, I think you can alleviate a drought. And although you might not have river, if you have snow in the winter time, by constructing pool to keep the snow, which can be a source of water to prevent drought. Do you make such effort?
Okay. Oh, thank you very much, Professor. Yeah, you have very good questions. Okay, I would like to start from the last two questions. The first one is the second question is about, is there any kind of the river to collect in the waters or preventing from the drought, something? Yeah, there is some of the river, but in the western part and the southern part, in east part, there is no big river, only one river in the eastern part, but in western part we don't have big river, southern part we don't have big rivers. That's why most of the area is Gobi area, Gobi desert area. That means like we don't have surface waters. All of the people, they are using underground water. Then most of the livestock and animals and wild animals, they are trying to find some of the surface water, but livestock is mostly using the well for drinking. That's why it is a little bit difficult to preventing by using the river's water in most of the part. Only in the north and central part they have some of the big river. But especially from the pastoralism, the nomadic pastoral is more pastoralism is more focusing in western part and eastern part. That's why it is difficult. And then the snowfall is depending on years. That disaster is they have types of the snow to the disaster. For example, some of days, some of type is mostly we calling white dot. White dot means the fully covered by snow. But after the snow, depending on the air temperature, if it is very cold, it is become iced. That's why during that iced time, most of the animals is dying because of no food and because of the cold temperature. But it is difficult to collecting that snows to collecting and input into the pond. Before 1919, when economic changes is changing, before the changing that economic transition, there was some of the fault to collecting the snows. But now it is because the livestock has become people's own, how can I say, not the national things. The livestock has become the all people's own things. That's why the herders, they cannot collecting snows to the pot. Before 1919, there is the system from the national level. Each of the governance and each of the provinces and local provinces, they have the collective work to collecting that snows to the pond, and they distributing that waters to the some of the small local farming areas to planting hays, vegetations, or the forage during the summertime. But that system is destroyed after 1919. That's why now we don't have that system. But based on the 3 times big drought occurred in 2000, 2010, and these years, the most of the local governments, they are rethinking about that previous systems, how we can rebuilding that kind of the ponds. But this kind of the big snows is falling not every day, not every year. It is depending on the years. Some years is no snow. If no snowing, we're calling it black dot. Black dot means because of the drought in summertime, during the winter time, very cold and no snow, but there is no vegetation. Same. That's why we're calling it the black dot. Yes, it is like that kind of the different situations. The first question is more about the human health. In Mongolia, we have the health system, but it is not very good system, may I say, sorry. But we don't have like supplements or the health, early screening for the people. We don't have that systems. But this is just starting 2 years ago. For example, like based on that means life expectancy is lower than women's, about 9 years difference. Based on that, and also the increasing number of the cancer or the increasing number of the injuries, we installed the new system that is the early screening system for the people. That is just 2 years ago we started. That's why recently we cannot see the results. If the system is going well, in maybe 5 or 10 years later, we can see the results. Maybe prevention is better for the healthy.
So there is a difference between men and women, and this may not be directly related to climate change, but when there is a climate change and thereby there is some impact, the vulnerable people, or like women, can become even more vulnerable. In Hyogo Prefecture, there is a certain association 10 years ago subsidized by the national government. I think there was about 10 million yen provided to Mongolia for afforestation. I think Hyogo Prefecture was engaged in that kind of project. And solar energy or natural energy related activity is what I am engaged in. Therefore, in order to create or construct a pool in Mongolia to provide some kind of solution to any impacts from the climate change, if there is such opportunity, please let me know. I hope that taking this opportunity, we have another opportunity to link between Mongolia and Hyogo Prefecture. This is Kawahara from PB Global Network. We are a network, NPO, and we are trying to contribute to the alleviation of climate change. And we are building and setting up a certain water system for small hydro generation. And we are very much interested in the flow of river for that purpose. And for the past 3 years, this is a question to Professor Taniguchi, by the way. For the past 3 years, in May, June, July, August, I think there's a certain flow in the river because of the rainfall. But after October, maybe November, December, January, February, the river is much dry. And compared to the other years, in the past 3 years, compared to the average, in terms of monthly water in the river, the water level is small in the wintertime, although in the summertime we have greater water in the river. And this difference is becoming more significant in the last 3 years. Do you think this tendency will continue going forward? I'd like to ask this question to Dr. Taniguchi. Thank you for the question. This is a very difficult question to answer. This is because, as I said in my lecture, the rainfall is not fixed. There are years with greater rainfalls and other years with smaller rainfalls. There is a lot of fluctuation. So in terms of fluctuation, of course, this is due to the global warming, but if you ask me what will be the rainfall for next year, this is a very difficult question to answer to. But what is deciding this, that is the level of rainfall, this is an impact from the sea surface temperature, which is providing impact to the atmospheric temperature. And because of that, the rainfall can differ.
So now we would like to check Q&A on the web.
Do you have any ESD for the several kind of next generation Mongolian and New Zealand? Balt sensei, Neef sensei.
And this is a question to Dr. Balt and Professor Neef.
I'm assuming that's meaning education for sustainable development. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. Actually, I just read the question.
So if anyone who asked that question, if the person can clarify that what ESD stands for.
Can you clarify ESD? What ESD stand for?
Right. I think we need to clarify what ESD means, or somebody who asked the question, if you can define what ESD means in your question.
Maybe we.
So I think I was familiar with ESD when I came to Kyoto, because we were at the Graduate School of Global Environmental Studies, and ESD was kind of a keyword for education for sustainable development. And I learned a lot during that time from my colleagues in Japan. At the University of Auckland, we have now a very strong sustainability focus in our teaching and in our research. University of Auckland is among the 10 best 10 universities in sustainability teaching and research, according to the Times Higher Education ranking. And we believe that we really need to train our new generation about everything that is related to how we make our lifestyle more sustainable, less carbon intensive, how we can reduce our emissions. And if you think about how Japan is contributed to climate change, 2.9% of global emissions come from Japan. In my home country, Germany, 1.8% is contributing to greenhouse gas emissions globally. And if you take all the Pacific Island countries together, they make up only 0.03% of global emissions. All the African countries together, 54 African countries altogether, are only responsible for 4% of global emissions. So you can see to what extent we really need to have a much better education for our young generation in Japan, in Germany, in those countries where we have very high emissions, so that we reduce our impact on the climate.
Thank you very much. Actually, the ESD is Education for Sustainable Development. Yeah, I think. And Barta Sensei.
Yes. In Mongolia, we don't have any system or program in education system for, especially for the high school system. We don't have it, but recent years we have some of the courses in some of the universities for more graduate levels. Yeah, that's why I heard one of the Japanese university, Okayama University, they are proposing some of the good program for Mongolia, especially for SDGs. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I think the person who asked the question says that ESD is Education for Sustainable Development. There's some few more questions on the web, so let me introduce another question to Professor Taniguchi. I think there's a greater number of the linear rain band. What is the reason of this high frequency of linear rain band? And can we not forecast this linear rain band earlier? Thank you for the question. With regard to linear rain band forecast, this is one of the highest priorities in our metropolitan agency and in other universities. People say that there are a greater number of linear rain bands these days, but this word, in the past, the word linear rain band did not exist. However, the phenomena itself did exist. There was a person who named this phenomena as a linear rain band in the Meteorological Agency in Japan. And because of this naming, the recognition of the rain band has increased, socially speaking. And also, as I said before, this vapor in the atmosphere has increased drastically in the recent years. The mechanism of rainfall has not changed, but in order to maintain the rain, there needs to be a lot of water vapor in the atmosphere. And because of the global warming, the sea level has increased and the vapor has increased. And thereby, in the same place, there is a maintenance of the water vapor. Therefore, it has led to the creation of a linear rain band. And in order to better forecast this rain band, we have to rely on observation. So we have to observe where the water vapor increases, and this is decided by the atmosphere flow. And unless we observe, we cannot tell where there is a greater vapor. And the observation of vapor volume is dependent upon the satellite observation. And from the ground, we have to use the balloon in a certain location to observe a certain location of the atmosphere, but this can be only dispersed. Therefore, the information of the area which is necessary is not being gained. And from Kyushu, Yamaguchi, Chugoku area, the western part of Japan is the area where we see a more frequent rain band. So the universities included in northern part of Kyushu, Kita Kyushu, there is an observation station in order to observe the water vapor of the atmosphere. This is included in the numerical model of the Meteorological Agency. So this is the highest priority nationwide. And by doing this observation, the Meteorological Agency now announces the forecast rain band. This is due to the concentrated observation, and concentrated observation is intensifying the forecast, and this is the flow. And so this is an endeavor that is led by the government as well.
So I would like to ask a question to Dr. Balt and Professor Neef based on your case presentation. So the first question to Dr. Balt, you talked about nomadic and pastoral systems and people engaged in them in Mongolia. And it looked like their livelihood is very much closely related to the environmental changes. And it looked like the climate change has a big impact on their lives or livelihood. And when it comes to taking measures against the climate change, what's the general population in Mongolia in terms of their interest in climate change or what they need to do?
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Banba. Yes, in Mongolian total population was about 3.8 million people, but 25% of them are taking the nomadic lifestyle, and they are directly depending from the climate. If climate and the temperature weather is nice, they can live good. But recently, due to this kind of the climate change, that the living condition is become very harsh and it is very difficult. But when recently our culture is changing because of this kind of the disasters. Most of the people, like over 15 years old, they would like to take care their traditional lifestyle of this nomadic lifestyle. But the youngers, they don't want to take care of it because of the difficult conditions and the hard work. Only two of the people for the family, it is very difficult to take care of their pasturing every day on the harsh condition. That's why the most of youngers, they're changing. They don't want to take in that kind of the lifestyle. Most of people, they are moving to the cities, youngers. But based on this kind of disasters is occurring, after that disaster that occurred years, the movement is increasing. How I say, migration maybe. The people's migration is increasing to the city centers. That is becoming the issue in Mongolia. Yeah, that's why we should be preventing from the migrations.
Thank you very much.
So from a high-risk area, people are migrating, and however, this I think is related to their living and also their love towards their hometown or home place. And I know that there are difficulties for relocation. So could you share with us these difficulties in relocations?
Yeah, so as I said, try to demonstrate in the presentation, it's very hard to get people to a safer place. There is actually quite in Fiji. Fiji has high mountains. They are actually a mountainous island, which is good. You can bring people in further inland where they are not affected by sea level rise. But then, as I said, they might face landslides or other natural disasters. But I think it's important to think about, as you said, how attached are people to their place, because their ancestors have lived there. The graves of their ancestors are in the place, and they feel very strongly that they should keep the place and maintain that place for future generations. Therefore, this new project that is funded by APN is so helpful, because it enables us to understand to what extent small-scale movements can actually contribute to keeping people where they are rather than moving them. Because the Fijian government has announced a few years ago they want to resettle hundreds of communities away from the coast. And that means it's actually destroying their livelihoods if they can't be close to the ocean, close to the rivers. So we need to think about alternative strategies. And we hope that this project by APN can really contribute to a major rethinking of policies in Fiji and Samoa as well.
Thank you very much.
So time is running out. And therefore, I'm very sorry that we could not respond to all of the questions from the web online participants. So now we would like to conclude the Q&A discussion time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So before we close, we would like to invite Professor Banba from University of Hyogo to give us the closing remark. I would like to thank you for attending this forum today. We have people attending in person and online, and about 100 people attended the forum today. It is regrettable that we didn't have enough time to answer all the questions, but I think we had a very good discussion as well as comments, so I would like to thank you again. So climate change is an issue that's close to our day-to-day life, but at the same time, this is a global phenomenon that's happening today. And then sometimes it's very difficult to understand in that context. But today we had three great speakers gave us a lecture as well as the cases and help us understand the difference between weather and climate, as well as the global warming mechanism. And also they shed light on the people who are more vulnerable. And in some areas, people have to move because it's very difficult to live. And knowing those actual cases, I think on the global scale, we also need to realize that this is happening somewhere around the world. And as part of the global community, we need to take these issues as if they are very close to us as well. I'm sure, one of the person mentioned in the comment that they already have some connection with Mongolia, supporting some project, but I hope today's forum will give you some inspiration to connect more and then work on these issues more. Thank you very much once again. Thank you. So with this, we would like to close today's forum. Thank you very much for your attendance today. And once again, please help us by filling up the questionnaire. Thank you very much. And please make sure to return the receivers back at the receptionist. And those of you attending on Zoom, thank you very much for joining, and now you can leave.